All right, so things are going to continue to get more and more crazy over the next 1 or 2 months for sure. Probably um, up until probably mid to late next winter, for the simple reason that in the States, obviously they have an election coming up, and the mainstream media is incredibly biased, and especially given the fact that at this point Trump is clearly ahead. I think a month or two ago, it was looking like it was pretty close. I mean, the polls had Biden ahead, but I didn't believe the polls. I thought it was pretty close still. I still would have bet on Trump. Definitely still would have bet on Trump if I had to bet. But now, I would probably still bet on Trump at like plus 150 to two, upwards of plus 200. I would still bet on Trump. Um, Anything above that, I'd say probably would be the middle ground. But at this point, I would probably give Trump like a 75% chance of winning. But again, the only thing for holding up Biden too is the mainstream media, and big tech being both biased. If it wasn't for the mainstream media and big tech being incredibly biased, Trump would be a 49, 48, 49 state landslide. Like literally, Trump would get 400 to 450 electoral college votes. It wouldn't even be close. But because the mainstream media and big tech is so biased, I still think the election will be relatively close. But I mean, if they let the debates go on, I think Trump is going to absolutely demolish Joe Biden, which probably swings things a little more in Trump's favor. But again, the main point I wanted to get at though was the mainstream media is becoming increasingly desperate because they want Biden to win. And in Canada, we're seeing similar stuff because number one, even the CBC and Global and all the CTV, they still go out of their way to attack Trump. And the Liberals just got out of a massive. I mean, the scandal's still going on. There was a big scandal, and to cover it up, they prorogued Parliament. So again, the media in Canada is having to do the same stuff, and they're having to work double time to cover up the fact that the Liberals handled this pandemic about as poorly as you possibly could have. I mean, aside from like a New York or those kind of places, you couldn't have handled it much worse. So anyway, that's kind of what the mainstream media is going at. But Luke Rudowski points out here. Um, I mean, the Babylon Bee puts out a article, which again, the Babylon Bee is a satire outlet, but they're becoming less and less satire because a lot of the stuff they're putting out is actually relatively accurate, even though they're a satirical news outlet, right? So they put it out a article on September. I can't really read that. I think it's the second, but they say rioters beginning to worry they can no longer loot safely, and the New York Times also put out an article saying, as right-wing groups increasingly move to confront protesters in U.S. cities, demonstrators are assessing how to keep themselves safe. And again, this is beyond satirical because the first reason being is that no one is attacking peaceful protesters. Nobody is doing that. The only groups of people that are being attacked or the police are going after are the violent ones, right? Like the only ones are the violent ones. So again, if they're peaceful protests, then these people should have no problem with extra police being called in and having right wing groups mar. And this is the other thing too, is that they smear these groups as right wing or far right, but the reality is that the vast majority of people agree with the quote unquote right wingers because the right wingers just want law and order, right? Like they want to end the rioting and the looting. That's all they want to do. And that is not a fringe position. In fact, the opposite position is the fringe position. And the fact that the mainstream media isn't pointing that out just goes to show just how biased they are. So anyway, the next thing I wanted to bring up here is Kyle Rittenhouse. Again, I've talked about him, but if you don't know who he is, he was the one that was charged with first-degree murder for defending himself in the wake of the Kenosha riots, basically. Um, and again, the problem with this is that we've seen on video from multiple angles too, I believe, the fact that this was about as obvious as a case of self-defense as you can possibly point to. And in the simple fact that number one, he was clearly being chased, and I believe the videos showed him being shot at too. And he was hit over the head with a skateboard, And the guy that he shot, or one of the guys he shot, literally the video shows him pulling a gun on Kyle right before he shoots him. Like, again, if someone pulling a gun on you isn't enough to be considered self-defense, then seriously, what is? And again, this is after being hit over the head with a skateboard. This isn't a guy just pulling out a gun, you know, in a peaceful manner, you know, if you can even do that in a peaceful manner in that context. But nonetheless, this is the most obvious case of self-defense you can probably possibly point to. I mean, aside from someone breaking into a little old lady's house and, you know, going at them and the little old lady shooting them, this is about as obvious of a case of self-defense as you can possibly point to. And the best thing the left can come up with is, oh, well, he's 17. Why does he have a gun in the first place? Like, again, these are the same people that think that, you know, 5-year-olds have the mental capacity to decide what gender they can be, but 17-year-olds don't have the capacity to understand how to safely operate a firearm. Like, again, far more people get killed in car accidents every year, and where everyone's fine with them um, operating vehicles, but they're not okay with them operating a firearm. You know, far more people are killed with, you know, alcohol, but even though it's technically illegal in both Canada and the States, the vast majority of people are fine with it, right? And the vast majority of people did it themselves. Again, so there's so many examples of just blatant hypocrisy that, yes, if people have the cognitive ability to do, and not to mention too, there's laws saying that they can't buy firearms. Yeah, that's perfectly fine, but there's no law saying that the barrier to whether or not things are self-defense differ whether you're 17 or whether you're 18 or whether you're a minor or you're an adult. No, the laws don't differ. I've seen cases of like 12, 13-year-olds using firearms, and you can look these up, to defend themselves, and they're still considered self-defense. So the self-defense laws do not differ whether you're an adult or you're a minor. They don't differ. And to make that argument, you literally need to make the argument that, oh well, that you should be able to make the argument in the reverse, right? Like, oh, attacking minors for no apparent reason must be fine again, apparently, to this, but again, it doesn't make any sense. So yeah, the fact that this is going on is absolutely insane. Not only should he be let off, but the prosecutor, anybody involved in this total witch hunt should be sued into bankruptcy, basically. Like, the people making these prosecutions should lose their house. Like, the idea, or should lose salary, should lose something of significance. Like, the idea that you can clearly charge someone who it was beyond obvious self-defense is absolutely insane. But nonetheless, and again, speaking of insanity, Rand Paul was this was about a week ago, but nonetheless, he was attacked. I believe it was outside the RNC, but or no, sorry, he was mildly attacked. But if there wasn't multiple police officers with him, he very well could have been killed. Now again, Rand Paul has been. I don't know if he was the one who was. I think it was someone else. He was involved in the shooting at the congressional, or was it the senator softball game. I think he was involved in that. He was the one whose neighbor like beat him up because he disagreed with him politically. So he's been around the block when it comes to this kind of stuff. And I mean, just imagine if this kind of stuff happened in the reverse. I mean, the left is more outraged at the guy showing up to was it Freeland's office, or which liberal was it? I don't remember which liberal it was exactly, but the guy showed up to her office and yelled some stuff that he probably shouldn't have said. But again, um, there is a stark difference between words and between actions. You can, aside from, um, literally inciting violence to someone, free speech is free speech. You can call someone whatever name you want to call them. You can say you deserve to, die in hell, or whatever crazy stuff people want to, or burn in hell, whatever crazy stuff someone wants to say. You can say that all you want. But the minute you tell other people to do it, to go hurt them, or say I'm going to go hurt them, then you cross the line. I think you cross an even worse line when you literally go do it, right? And the fact that the left is more upset with that case than this case, when this case is clearly worse, just goes to show that they only care about it when it's the other side doing it, right? And again, I condemn that the thing that guy. I mean, I think you have every right to do what he did, but you shouldn't have went about it in the way he did it. You should have went about it in a different way. And using some of the stuff he said, I don't think is productive either. But um, nonetheless, and the last thing I wanted to bring up here is from Spencer Fernando, and he goes on to say, or he links to his story actually, but Canadian economy suffered worst drop in history in Q2. And this is something I'm going to make another specific video on, but I wanted to bring it up briefly because this is a huge issue that we're coming out of a global pandemic, which again, I think calling it pandemic may be a little bit over the top, but whatever you think, we have a very, very poor economy right now. Unemployment rate, the real unemployment rate, I think is about 15 to 20%, give or take. I was actually reading today. I think Alberta's about 16. Again, the problem too with the quote unquote the government unemployment rate is they don't include people who aren't looking for work, which right now that's a lot of people because there's a lot of people that are on the government assistance programs that just don't want to work. And not to mention too, those don't take into account also the people that lost their jobs that went back to work and either got a pay cut or they don't have as much hours or they just lost their job flat out and the only work they can find is a job that doesn't pay as well. So that's the problem with the government unemployment. And there's other problems to it as well, but those are the main ones, is they underestimate the severity, which is why when you see the unemployment rate, you really have to take it with a grain of salt, and or assume that it's actually a little bit worse than what it is. So the only way that the unemployment rate actually is actually something that you should be happy with is if it's like incredibly low, like below 4%, I would say, or at the very least below 5, but I would say below 4, preferably even below 3 would be the best. Because again, the real number is probably double to triple what it actually is. So when you take into account those other factors. But again, this is something that's really going to hurt Canada, I think, going forward. The only good thing I think that'll come out of this, I think, is that this just pushes us closer and closer to the tipping point that we're inevitably going towards. And my hope is that we just reach that tipping point sooner or later. And by tipping point, I mean the point to where people finally realize that we can't continue to give away unlimited free stuff. And um, when we rather than face the reality that we can't afford it, we just go further and further into debt. Because right now, that's not everybody. That's most people's solution. Oh, we can't pay for all this free healthcare and free stuff. Well, we can either cut back or we can just go more and more into debt. And what do most people want? More and more debt, right? Like even people on the right, I would say it's still a slight majority. On the left, it's like 95%. On the right, I'd say it's probably like 55%, 60% maybe. But the only like I would say like 150 to 100 years from now, I would bet money that we don't have a system to where everybody gets free healthcare. I don't think we'll have a welfare system. I don't think we'll have any, at least not in the way it's currently being done. At least not in the way it's currently being done. And why do I say that? Because there's no way to pay for it. There's just no way to pay for it, right? So, anyway, if you like the video, make sure you hit that like and subscribe if you haven't already. Make sure you check me out on Twitter, on BitChute, and on Parler. Make sure you follow me on every single platform. Very important. You like, you subscribe, you follow. So make sure you do that if you haven't already, and stay tuned for more.